All right, Dr. Shu, thanks so much for being here with us today, man.
Evan, thank you. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, I was just telling you before we got on, and this is going to be relevant for the audience because a lot of the people that are listening, Dr. Shu, sometimes are not in the FDN course yet, or they're trainees, so they might not know this. But a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, at least I would love to direct it towards the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, Prolon. I was actually part of a group for FDN with the founder and stuff. It was one of the first projects I did for them, where we did research and development for Prolon. So we actually had a bunch of people test this out. We all loved it. It was something that we now incorporate in FDN. And for those that are listening that are trainees, just so you understand this while you're listening, you'll actually be able to get like an account with them. You can get discounts on it. You could use it with clients. And I'm getting ahead of myself, of course, but I just want people to know that before we even start today. And even before we get into the,
you've had
I guess even before we get into Prolon, yeah, I'd love to know about you. I mean, what is your background? How did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, well, thank you, Evan. I'm an endocrinologist by training, so I'm a physician that specializes in the hormone system of the body, and specifically, I have been working with diabetes actually for about 20 years prior to joining L-Nutra as the chief medical officer. So it was during the times when I was working with patients and doing research that I felt that we don't really focus on eradicating the root problem that led to diabetes. You know, we have so many options right now in terms of medications, but it's always after the fact, after the diagnosis is made. And once the diagnosis is made, it's the same for all the chronic conditions. They're incurable. Hypertension, diabetes, hypercholesterol level, then you're committed to a medication your entire life. So I wanted to devote my life to something that can address the issue earlier and addressing the root cause. And that's why I joined L-Nutra about 3 years ago.
Cool. Why do you, because I've had a lot of doctors on that came from a more traditional Western background, and, you know, some people end up thinking like you're thinking and then others don't. Do you think that what you're saying is a common thought pattern in most endocrinologists, or do some just never even think like this?
Well, I think the idea isn't that people aren't thinking about it. It's we never really had a tool that was pragmatic. For example, every physician should or is talking to his or her patients about lifestyle changes, because we all know lifestyle medicine really is sort of the crux that could prevent a lot of conditions, right? So it's not the lack of knowledge, but we never really had a pragmatic tool. If you tell people to change their lifestyle for, eat a good diet every single day, everybody knows, but it cannot be done. Right? You tell people to exercise every single day, everybody knows, but it's difficult to do. So it's that separation, that reality of yes, we know what we should be doing, and number two, the inability for the most of us to implement those recommendations. That was, what kept a lot of the doctors from really spending time at addressing the root cause of many of these problems.
That's a really good point. And I like to ask that and hear these perspectives because thankfully our group is really great, Dr. Shu. I mean, they're very objective when it comes to Western and functional. No one's being dogmatic. But clearly in the world of natural medicine and functional a lot, there is this very, in my opinion, unjustified anger and even sometimes hatred towards Western medicine and Western medicine practitioners. Now, if you don't want to like the system, that's one thing. But when people start attacking like literal doctors who clearly have the best of intentions for people, I don't think that's solving anything. It's just further dividing this and not really helping the clients and patients. So it's good to get your perspective and understand this because, you guys want to help, but guys, think about it. If you're in the world of FDN, you're a full-time FDN. If you're working with like about 15 to 25 clients a month, that is more than a full-time living. So think about how many people you could work with in a week compared to us, because it's a different system, right? It takes a lot of work to guide these people through these lifestyle changes. You have a different job.
Yeah, and that's why, when a physician spends a few minutes with the patient, think about like how powerless the clinician feels, right? in terms of imparting those knowledge and wisdom and try to get results out of it. And so the conventional medicine now kind of resorts to things when you take, one pill a day, we're going to see the blood pressure drop. And so that is really, unfortunately, but it's the reality of the time and demands, and therefore I think the world is looking for new solutions and new lifestyle medicine solutions, new solution that really addresses the root cause of these conditions, and it has to be doable. It has to be pragmatic, and I think I think with this whole movement around the understanding of fasting, and not just fasting for a couple hours a day, but the new insight revealed by science, I think it has opened up a new generation of followers or innovators in this space, and hopefully we'll get to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's probably where we'll transition to next, because I think it's important to talk about fasting in general before we explain why your guys' system is actually like this genius way to get people to do something that is normally almost impossibly hard for some people. And I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park, but because I've done it, but it makes it absolute. This is coming from someone, Dr. Shu, who's done 72-hour water fasts. I would choose a 5-day Prolon fast any day of the week, even though that's more days technically. It's such a different experience. So what are some of these benefits of fasting? Because I am very big into this. I've been intermittent fasting for about 6.5 years, but I find that there's still so much confusion about this in the world of functional medicine. So like, what is the interesting research that we're finding and learning about fasting?
Yeah, first of all, when people hear about fasting, they get scared. They're like, no, I need to eat. I don't want to go hungry. I go hangry, right? When people don't eat. I think the first recognition it should be that everybody fasts. When do we fast? When we sleep, we fast. So it's not so much that is a new activity. It's actually so built in all the biological systems in the world. If you look at our environment, before we had refrigeration, before we had agriculture, our ancestors used to go through periods where there was not a lot of food. This was built in. And so how our ancestors survived during those times when there wasn't a lot of food, it's actually not only unique to humans. It happened to all the animals. It happened to all the bacteria. It happens to every living organisms. There were times when they were more times of no food than times of plenty of food, if you think about that, right? And so how the body adapted to those periods was to say, hey, there's no food. I have to begin to look for energy source within our own body. So during fasting, the body looked for fats, for example, as a source of energy. Each cell also looked for its unique source of energy inside its own, looking for what? Not the most efficient and functional parts of the cell, but the less functional, the older, the more worn out parts of the cell. And what does the cell do? Well, it needs to sacrifice those parts for energy because there's no food coming in. Now, that trigger of that self-eating process only comes about when there's enough stress. So it's the stress that force every single cell of the body to go through that process. Now, we didn't know about this. People used just to fast because it was good for them, because it was good for their spiritual pilgrimage, right? So a lot of the religions of the world practices fasting, but now science tells us. For example, in 2016, Professor Otsumi from Japan actually won the Nobel Prize, right? Describing this process where the lack of food for a couple of days can trigger this process called autophagy, that means self-eating. And now science is beginning to leverage our understanding of the mechanism of autophagy and this fasting mimicking diet, which we're going into a little bit later. The Prolon diet is really designed so that one is able to get the energy from eating some specific nutrients and not triggering the cell's ability to know that there are energy coming into the body. And so we could go into that a little bit more, but I think, we've come to a different era where what nature has designed for us to survive during those times of famine, now we can leverage it to benefit our health and supporting healthy longevity.
This is a great description, because this is why I don't understand why people just don't acknowledge this intuitively, because all I ask them to do, because fasting, you're right, is scary to a lot of people. It sounds like, whoa, I can't do that. But to me, it's like, if you can't do this, especially the people, Dr. Shu, that can't they can't fast for like 24 hours without feeling terrible. I just asked them to think about this. How would you have done in the wild if you couldn't even fast for 24 hours with being brain fogged and just miserable and low energy and dizzy? Like, do you really think your genetics would have been passed on? Because I'm sure we would have been not eating for 24 hours or longer all of the time. Like, this would have happened frequently. Now, what's even more amazing, because one doesn't necessarily mean the other. Just because we would have been fasting all the time doesn't mean that it's actually this wonderful, or activates this wonderful healing mechanism in the body. But it turns out that it does. And it just shows the innate intelligence that is within our body and other species, right? Because they have the ability to do this, even on just the cellular level. I mean, it has nothing to do even with mammals, right? You can take this steps and step further and just see this is almost an inherent part of life, where it knew there would be periods where we're not getting these energy sources. And so it was smart enough to say, well, wait a second, we better do something useful during that time period then. And it turns out it's one of the most healing things. I had someone on this show that I guarantee he would not have been able to explain autophagy to you. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. He wouldn't have been able to do that. But he fasted at one point, Dr. Shu, for over, I think it was about 17 or 18 days. It was a water-only fast. It was a crazy experiment. I'm not recommending anyone do this. This is not medical advice. But this guy went from literally having chronic fatigue, getting medically discharged from the military, to being almost completely healed after he did that. And I think it just goes to show the power of the body when we activate this stuff. I mean, it's a really, really amazing thing and discovery of why this works. Because you're right, the religions knew in 2017, that was the big time where we actually understood, wow, this really is that important.
Yeah, and I think for most of our audience, that prolonged water fasting, although it potentially could bring a lot of benefits, but for a lot of people could also be unsafe, right, because of their underlying health conditions. So certainly talk to your doctor about this, but there are better ways to do this. There are more pragmatic ways to do this, and maybe we could, explain and understand this process a little bit better. How do we hack this with modern science, right? Because every cell in the body has these ears and eyes that can sense the new level of nutrients. And essentially, we call them the nutrient sensors on the cells, on the surface of the cell. So each time the cells senses amino acids, proteins, glucose, carbohydrates, it tells the cells to grow. Whenever the cells, these sensors, these nutrient sensors, don't see any of these molecules coming into the cells, or flowing in the bloodstreams, it tells the cells to rest, to rejuvenate, to clamp down. It's not the time to grow. There's no nutrients, and it triggers these healthy aging processes by rejuvenating and replacing these worn out, older parts of the cells with something new, especially when food eventually comes. So I often use this example, like a company, right? So a company doesn't bring revenue in a day, it may not do anything. Everybody's on vacation, that's fine. But if they don't bring revenue in about a week, the chief financial officer is going to say, hey, there's something, we better get ready. But what if it doesn't bring money in a month? Now, what is the executive team going to do? It's going to say, no, guys, let's trim the fat. Let's get rid of the least important part of the company. Let's reorg, right? And so the company then shrinks down. It becomes more efficient. If it becomes more functional, it's able to do the same with less, and it becomes more efficient, right? And then guess what? When the company eventually turns around and begins to rebuild again, it's able now to grow, become more efficient, more functional company over time. That's exactly what the body does through times of fasting, right? So when the food is not coming in, the body becomes more efficient. And later on, when the food comes back on, then the body grows and becomes strong. And so it turns out that it's not just fasting that is the big story, but it's the repeated cycles of fasting and refeeding, right?
Mhm.
Fasting and then the good nutrition afterwards. It is that repeated cycles that became the secret to healthy aging and to cellular rejuvenation. Much like the story of
Sure.
exercise. A lot of people say, oh, we should exercise more. But can you imagine exercise 24 hours and no rest? No, it's actually not, right? It's actually
Mhm.
not good for you. It's the combination of exercising and the rest. The resting allowed the muscles to heal, right? Allowing the regrowth and rebuild of these fibers that were torn apart during exercise. So it's important, it's really important. It's not how long you fast, it's really the repeated cycles of fasting and then good nutrition afterwards. And
Mhm.
it's that repeated cycle that is so key to healthy longevity and cellular rejuvenation.
I think it's an important point what you said about, first of all, that was an excellent analogy with the business. I've never heard that used for autophagy and fasting. So I will definitely steal that. Thank you. But it's an important part to mention about refeeding properly, because I think what's happened in the world of intermittent fasting, I know I saw this when I first started, is that people believe, oh, okay, cool. Well, if I just, especially if they take it to the extreme ends, if I fast for 23 hours a day and then eat this huge one meal, I can basically just eat crap and have whatever I want. And you know what? Depending on the person, it seems like that works for a little bit. You might be able to get away with it for a while, but then what eventually happens is, since you weren't rebuilding, all you're doing is like you break down the body, break down the body, break down the body, but then you were never building it back up with the proper vitamins and nutrients. You need that good food. You can't just fill it up with a pizza afterwards and a bunch of like cakes and candies. That's not how intermittent fasting was supposed to work. So with L-Nutra and Prolon specifically, because I think that's how the world knows it, you know, Prolon, the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, how on earth did you guys figure out how to perfect these macronutrient ratios to basically trick the body? Because I was very surprised when I did this, how much I could eat, how many carbohydrates I was eating, because typically I could only do that if I was doing a classic ketogenic diet. And I was testing myself. Like, I have a ketone meter. I was still in ketosis while I did this. It was really amazing. So how did this all come to be? Because there was a lot of work that went into it, from my understanding.
Yeah. The credit really goes to Professor Walter Longo, who is the founder of the company L-Nutra. He is a researcher at the University of Southern California. He is actually the director of the Longevity Institute at USC. For a long time, he wanted to really figure out, what are the levers for healthy longevity. And, he began to look at many, and just like many other research, and looking at nutrition as the source, because you are what you eat, right? So whatever food you put into your mouth has to do something with how well you're going to live, to stay healthy and live long.
Mhm.
But I think the conversation really shifted, during his tenure at USC, and that is, a lot of people debated, what do you eat? What are the, how much protein, how much carbohydrate? I mean, that debate still goes on, right? But I think one of the most important contribution to this was he began to ask not just what do we eat, but when do we eat, the timing of our
Mhm.
meal. And he was able to start looking from a single cell organism um, like yeast all the way to animals like rodents, and then later on in clinical trials in humans. And he was able to figure out, everything has a threshold in biological system. Where, remember those nutrient sensors that I spoke about? They also have a threshold,
Mhm.
meaning that there is a certain amount of nutrients that will trigger these nutrient sensors. But if you give the nutrients below that threshold, you're able to then trick the body, right? Because you're not giving too much nutrients, so you actually are going under the detection threshold of these nutrient sensors. That way, you can have the best of both worlds. You feed the body with some nutrients, but you are falling below that detection, so you don't trigger these nutrient sensors. So the cells still go into these rejuvenation pathways as if you're fasting for 5 days. This is actually a huge breakthrough. It's 20 years of research funded by the National Institutes of Health and by the European Union. I mean, there's been about 100 publications arising from this fasting mimicking technology, and that's what gave birth to the prolonged 5-day fast.
It's very impressive how much science you guys do have behind this, because there's a lot of claims, right, about which diets or supplements. Like autophagy is now becoming a hotter and hotter term. And in fact, there's pharmaceutical companies that are working to create medications to do this in your body, when literally we were being able to do this for free. This is just an essential part of living. So of all the pharmaceuticals I would not recommend, that would probably be one of them, when you could do this with things like Prolon or just even, again, water fasting. But that's not going to be for everyone, especially the sicker that they are. It could be actually pretty detrimental sometimes. So I'm always impressed by the science behind this and how you guys can actually back this up, because the reason that you want to do 5 days, from my understanding, is even when you're doing a normal fast, the deepest levels of autophagy, isn't that taking a few days to really kick in? Am I correct in that?
That's absolutely right. I think, while there is a huge movement on the intermittent fasting, it certainly has its benefits, especially with weight loss and metabolic support. But the type of changes we're talking about deep inside the cells, the cellular benefits and the effects of the autophagy, can only come about when one undergo fasting for more than 2 days. And and a lot of times I think about this as almost like cleaning. You could do your weekend cleaning. You kind of you wipe the tabletop, you vacuum, your carpet. But it's very different than when spring comes, when you do your spring cleaning, right? Because you take down those curtains, you shampoo your carpet, and that is really the difference between intermittent fasting, right? With 16/8 or whatever sort of time range you apply to a 5-day prolonged fast. The difference is really that cellular benefit. So a lot of people after the 5-day prolonged fast, they experienced benefits in, oftentimes I call the 4 different levels, because you're going through deep autophagy. First of all, you're going to find that your waistline is smaller, has to, because the body needs to survive. So it's going to tap into the source of fat that's deep inside the body. It's going to be the fat in the liver, the fat in the abdomen. We call it the central fat, the visceral fat, the fat you really want to get rid of. Not only because cosmetically you look better when you get rid of that fat, but health-wise, it's also the worst fat in the body. So when you fast with Prolon, you're going to lose that central fat, number one. So you experience that physical change right away. Number two, people often come because of the physical benefit, but they come back over and over again to Prolon because how it makes them feel. Just remember the religious fast, right? Over the history of humanity, different religions, people practice fasting in Christianity, in Buddhism, in Islam, in all the major religions, because it helps them focus their mind. People feel better energy after fast. It feels that they are rejuvenated, not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually. A lot of people come back to the prolonged fast because the higher energy they feel, the brain fog is gone, they have renewed energy. So I think that is something that people don't emphasize enough. It's how good one feels after a 5-day fast. Number three, there is a lot of behavior change, and also people feel differently, and it changes the way they eat afterwards, because after 5 days, it changes the relationship where you have with your food, right? 5 days without eating your favorite, whatever addiction you have. And it just changes that link, that capture, of your allegiance to food. It changes that relationship to food. So people feel more confident about what they're about, how they're going to be eating, in the weeks to come. And that behavior, that self-confidence, the sense of accomplishment really translates to changes in behavior. And then the fourth one I often talk about is something you don't see, but you have to believe in the science, and that is there is autophagy occurring on every cell of the body. Your cells are rejuvenating, and we have publications to support, for example, the lowering of insulin level, the global lowering of IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factors, that reflects that the nutrient status of the body is transiently dropped, so which allows every cell in the body to respond to that drop in the nutrient level, and so it undergo these autophagy process. So 4 different benefits, 4 different levels: physiologic, emotional, behavioral, and cellular. And I think that's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, it is amazing. If I'm someone that's new to this and I don't know anything about it, and I'm interested now because I'm hearing all these benefits, it sounds cool. And again, from personal testimonial, guys, it's not a walk in the park. Of course, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. That's the point. Those are good things in life, but this is significantly easier than the water fast that I have done. I mean, it's a night and day difference. It's actually quite enjoyable in a sense, because once you're like in the rhythm of it, you feel good, you have good energy still. So what will this look like for people? Like, I'm someone, I order the kit, I get it. What happens? How often do I get to eat? How much?
So Prolon is really a 5-day meal kit. Just think about this. Professor Longo, when he invented the Prolon, he didn't want people to fast because he knew people didn't want to fast. People want to eat. So this is a 5-day structural meal plan. Each day it has a certain number of calories. First day, it's actually around 1,200 calories, quite high. But day 2 to day 5, it drops down to in the 700s. And it has carbohydrate in there, it has fats in there, all plant-based, and it has soups in there, it has bars in there, and they're all designed with meticulous science to keep your body in a fasting state, and at the same time provide some essential nutrients. So each day is organized by a box. So this is day 1 box, day 2 box, day 3 box, day 4 box, day 5 box, and you just follow the instruction. There's morning, a portion of nutrients, and there is lunch. There's some snacks, and there are all the micronutrients there. We also provided for you. So it's really a very complete considerations and design to support you through the 5-day fast. So it's that easy. You don't have to shop, so you actually save your grocery costs when you're on this 5-day fast. There is a trick, however. I often say, if you want to do this, just remember, find someone to do it with you. It could be a significant other, yes. It could be a friend. It's much easier when you're trying something new together. It's like going to yoga class. Find a friend. Let's do it together.
I think that's actually, it's good that you brought that up, because I want to be clear about what I mean when I say it's still a challenging thing. When you fast with water, guys, if you're doing that for 72 hours, that is mentally challenging, of course, but it's also physically challenging. I would not say in my experience that Prolon was so much physically challenging as it is mentally challenging. We want to go eat whatever we want, whenever we want. We want to eat large amounts of it. You know, it makes our body feel good, and we get all this dopamine released. I mean, it's more of an addiction, pleasure-based type thing than anything. It's not so much that, oh, I can't do my day or live my life right now. I was able to live my life throughout Prolon. I don't know that I would go run a marathon, but I was able to do everything else I needed to do. Whereas a legitimate water fast, I just can't even do most things by the time I'm at like 48 hours. I'm not going out running around or lifting weights or something. And so it's the mental side. So if you have a partner in this, I think that's what makes it a lot easier. And it was cool because even though Dr. Shu, like our colleagues, none of us were in person together. We were all remote, but having our little Facebook group where there was like 5 or 6 of us or whatever it was, I think it was actually maybe 8 people at the time. And every single day we're like talking to each other. We had someone coming in on a call, like one of your doctors was hopping in, I think, with us, talking to us. This was a couple of years ago at this point. And you're like, all right. So this is normal. Like, I'm motivated now. I know there's these other people counting on me and they don't want me to quit either. So it does help. And then once you get over that hump, there's something beautiful that happens with fasting, which it makes it so obvious what all these religions were talking about, as you've already described. You start feeling that clarity, that calmness, that lack of need for you don't have that same addictive quality of food. Like, I don't need that for pleasure. You're just enjoying life in a different way. And it really can happen relatively quickly. I genuinely believe that. So don't you guys have, if I'm not mistaken, don't you have some type of Facebook group now too, where people can do these things with others? Is that true?
Yeah, we have a fantastic group. It's called Fastination on Facebook. Uh, and we have about 27 followers and 27,000 followers in the
Wow.
Fascination group. Everybody is cheering each other on. You won't ever need to do this alone. There are all kinds of tidbits and people sharing their experiences and sometimes their struggle as well. And so definitely, I would invite you to join the Fascination group. It's lots of people, like-minded people, just like yourself, trying to improve their health.
Mhm.
But let me also mention one thing,
Cool.
Joe. We actually have studies to show that just 5 days of prolong per month has many of the same benefits as everyday heart healthy diet. Just think about that. How amazing that research is. 5 days a month, because Prolon in our clinical trial is 5 days per month, and you repeat it 3 to 4 times in a year. Just that kind of arrangement, we're talking about 5 days times four, it's 20 days in 120 days of 4 months, right? 120 days in a month. Just 20 days of Prolon will give many of the same benefits as everyday good heart healthy diet. And that for modern people who are busy, we all know we got to eat right, but sometimes we don't. We can't because of the schedule. We're traveling. It's hard to get good food into the body. Now, I'm always for good nutrition every single day. Don't get me wrong on this, but remember how pragmatic this is. You take 5 days out of the month, you're devoted to a prolonged fast. It has many of the same benefits as everyday nutrition. And I'll use another example, and Evan, you might like this, is when I went back to thinking about the days when I went to med school, you know, I knew in my head that I should have studied every single day, right? I should have done pre-study before I went to lecture. I should pay attention during lecture. I should review at the end of the day. And so when the test came, well, when the midterm came, I should be prepared every single day. But Evan, I have to
Yes.
admit to you that that wasn't the case. Okay, what did I do? I crammed about a few days before the midterm and the finals, right? But hey, I made it through because it was the stress of the exam,
Yes.
and I studied. I paid all my attention during those couple of days, and it got me through these exams. Now, it's maybe a little bit similar. You know, we as Americans generally have poor diets. Okay, otherwise we wouldn't have 70% overweight prevalence in the society. However, if you're struggling to eat well every single day, at least spend 5 days a month. Maybe just 3, 4 cycles in a year. That's all you need. It can offset many of the negligence that we did to our body. And that's the beauty of applying science to what the nature has designed through these prolonged fasts.
I 100% agree with this, and I think that is it's a practical way to apply this to people's daily lives. And listen, I've seen this myself because I'm someone, I practice, obviously, like I said, fasting. I've done Prolon, I do keto, and a true keto that actually gets me into that real state. And what I have found the longer that I do this, Dr. Shu, is despite being very sick at one point in my life and having a lot of restrictions, I couldn't eat certain foods without getting a reaction. I felt terrible. I'd break out from everything. I am able to, quote unquote, cheat on that other diet a lot more now. And I think this is what it seems, this is how the body's designed. It actually takes quite a while for most of us to really truly get sick. But this ability that we've been given to heal is way more rapid than the time it takes to get sick. So we can get well way quicker than we can get sick, if that makes sense to people. And that's why what you're saying, I think, actually has a lot of validity. And no one here is suggesting, yes, the other 25, 26 days out of the month, go eat McDonald's every day.
No one.
But the point is, when you do something like Prolon, I absolutely believe it gives us an opportunity to take a very legitimate break from the extreme perfectionism, almost orthorexic type tendencies that a lot of us in the functional space develop because we have been so sick. I'm not saying it's not valid at a time, but many people lose the ability to get out of that. I was in that boat. I'm 3 years down the road, still as restricted as I am before. I'm like, well, wait a second, Evan, you're trying to heal. why would you need to be eating the same way right now as of 3 years ago? Like, you just have to learn to balance that better. And Prolon is a way to balance it very well.
And maybe let's speak to those who are saints among us, okay, that eat right, exercise every day. There is still there's still room for you to do Prolon, because that deep cleanse, that deep rejuvenation is not something that you can trigger just from everyday diet. So even for those who do well every single day, you still find that cellular rejuvenation that comes from Prolon to be something that can add on to your routine. And we're talking about 3 to 4 cycles per year can bring that benefit. And so it really is such a pragmatic solution for those who don't eat well, and for those who eat well and take care of themselves. I think Prolon has that universal application.
Cool. We already discussed how, again, an extremely sick person, especially if they're super overweight, they're insulin resistant, there's benefits to minor fasting, and maybe you can do more over time, but there is dangers to just, I guess a better way to word it is this: not everyone on this planet should be going out and just randomly doing a 5-day water fast. That's not a good idea, and that is going to affect some people negatively for sure. Is there anyone that cannot do Prolon? Because I feel like you guys have done a really good job at creating a safe barrier for even really sick people to be able to do this.
Yeah, we are a extremely responsible company. I think, in our website and our product, we always say, if you're underweight, don't do it, because it's just not time to where you want to have even further energy deficits. So body mass index of less than 18, I think that it's not something that you should be trying to fast. Also, many people struggling with eating disorder, I think even trying Prolon can trigger some of those behavior. Let's stay away from that. There is certainly, this is for adults, because children, I think one will have to speak to the physicians, and then we don't apply this product to minors. On the upper level of the age spectrum, we generally say 70 years old, but as you and I know, there are some 70-year-olds who are stronger and healthier than 50-year-olds, and vice versa. So I think it really needs to be individualized. Know your own health condition. Talk to your physician if you're age 70 and above. And then, so these are sort of the general guardrails. And again, everyone's health is different. Everyone's condition is different. I think speaking to healthcare providers about whether you are a candidate for a prolonged fast, I think it's always in order.
Well, speaking of 70-year-olds, our founder I keep forgetting, he either is 70 or he's like 69, so he's very close, but you would never know it. And he has successfully done Prolon, I think, at least 3 times now. Because when he does something, man, it's game over. Like, he's going to do it right. And so if I'm actually not mistaken, I'm even guilty of this. He was the only person, I think, in our R&D group who actually did exactly what you guys said, where, hey, do this one time for this month and then do it a second and a third, and he really loves it. Surely, just to be clear, because I felt benefits from it, there are some benefits from just doing this even one time. So, I mean, what's the difference between someone that does this one time versus, once a month for 3-4 months straight? Because I feel like maybe you can get a lot better results, and now I kind of want to do this. I want to do that experiment.
Now we have studies with 1 cycle, 3 cycles, 4 cycles, 6 cycles, and 12 cycles. So we have done all these studies. And what we've learned is it is incremental. The benefits, it's incremental. Remember, it's, as I said earlier, it's really the repeated cycles of fasting and the nourishment, fasting and nourishment. That was really the key to healthy aging. So if your goal is really healthy aging as your goal, staying younger longer, right? Looking for that deep cellular cleanse, that deep cellular benefits, then I think you really want to go for 3 to 4 cycles a year. Now, that's what our studies have shown. Now, with 1 cycle, obviously, you're going to experience the weight loss. You're going to experience the mental clarity, the energy. You're going to experience all that. But there's nothing you do in life that only takes once. You can work out once, and your benefit, it's going to require you to repeat that exercise. So I think the same with prolonged fast. I would suggest that that for most people, 3 to 4 cycles of a year, to make a commitment, 3 to 4 cycles per year, that is what the studies have shown to generate the optimal benefits. Now, there are going to be specific individuals with specific health targets that may require more cycles, but we would ask you to be under the care of a physician when you're doing more cycles.
Okay. Cool. I mean, I guess then, yeah, in a perfect world, I mean, everyone would be doing this just about every other month for the rest of their lives. And it'd be kind of a great way to hack some of the things that are going on in today's world. And again, it's just a much gentler, nicer way to fast. I mean, I think even if they don't actively practice it, Dr. Shu, I would imagine I could get everyone in this that listens to this podcast to agree that human beings are supposed to be fasting and going through these cycles. But whether they actually do it or not is a whole different story. And I feel like this is one of the most straightforward, simple ways that we're going to get to be able to do this stuff. If I may add, I also noticed now, I don't think you guys had this back when I did it. You have these 1-day kits now where someone can do this for just 1 day. What's the benefit of that? Because obviously that's kind of the equivalent of like exercising one time. I imagine that's only so much benefit. Is that more just to prep them psychologically and get them warmed up for something bigger? Like, why do you have the 1-day one?
Well, some people saying, 5 days, I'm not ready to take on that challenge. And we also know, for example, many people practice intermittent fasting. And 5-2, for example, in the literature has been shown to be helpful for metabolic support, for weight loss. So what that is some people choose to 2 days out of the week, non-consecutively, to fast for those 2 days. So instead of fasting 5 days straight, these are called 5-2 intermittent fasting. And so those 5 days, those 2 days out of the week, where they are fasting, they can use our 1-day kit called Reset. It's all the same technology. It's the same fasting mimicking technology out of the University of Southern California, Walter Longo's lab. It's the same technology. We also have something called the fasting bar or the fast bar that is also designed for intermittent fasters. For example, you say you want to wake up in the morning, you don't want to eat, but you go hungry and you want to extend that overnight fast, let's say overnight fast of 12 hours, but you really wanted to do 16 hours or 18 hours, you could eat that bar, and that because of the fasting mimicking property of the bar, is going to keep your body in the fasting state. So it's really a pragmatic solution for those who might want to do intermittent fasting, like 16A, or some people might want to do 5-2, 5 days of normal eating, 2 days of fasting, or for people who want to do that prolonged periodic fasting, that cellular, the deep regenerative fasting of prolonged, of 5-day prolonged fast. So we are trying to really fit everybody's needs by providing these fasting mimicking products, and hopefully everybody can find the product that will suit their needs and their personal taste.
Very cool. I didn't even think about that from the context of the 5-2. I've heard of the 5-2 before, but I'm not going to lie, like it's been a while since I've talked to someone who actually does it. So that's interesting to know that there's people out there doing that and using it for this reason. That's pretty cool. We have like about 6 minutes left. So of course I'm going to ask where people can find this in you. But before we get to that, I just want to know, because you've worked with this for a long time, what's like a really cool success story that you guys maybe like share around the office, like someone that had like a really dramatic healing result from this? And I'm not saying that this can be the expectation for everyone. That's my disclaimer. But I'm just curious if there's anyone that's had like some very profound results, more than you even expected.
Well, I think, because we are a consumer product, and I don't want to dive into many of the clinical states. There are many people with those experiences, but I would just say that maybe I'll point out two things. L-Nutra is so committed to research and development. We have now looking at the same technology with regards to its application in diabetes, its application in cancer, its application in autoimmune conditions. Now, that is the dream of our founder. That's actually the mission of our company, to really take food and then turn it into medicine. Now, we still got a way to go, but this is where we're seeing amazing potential applications. And I'm not advertising the use of our product for disease conditions. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm talking about the aspiration of the company, where we want to do is really to uncover the true potential of lifestyle medicine and to turn that into a therapeutic agents. And that's what I think the most amazing stories we've heard. But again, we need science, we need clinical trials, we need to go through the correct regulatory pathway so that dream can be fulfilled. But on the everyday level, people are telling us they feel better. People are telling us they're losing weight. People are telling us they've never felt as good as before. Since they have tried prolonged fast, that they have really experienced a change in their mindset, change in their behavior. I think that alone brings so much joy and satisfaction to us, as researchers, as a company that brings good nutrition to the world. Now, we are actually a fasting nutrition company. We don't just want people to go out and fast because we think it's too difficult and too much safety issues there. We're a fasting nutrition company. We actually want people to eat during this period. How do we leverage the science to uncover what nature has designed for us? If we can bring this to as many people as possible, I think our mission will be fulfilled.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Xu, where can people, do you have any personal social media where people can find you and follow you?
Well, I am on Fastination, and we answer all the medical questions. We interact with a lot of folks. So Fastination on Facebook is a group that I'll encourage you to join. For information about Prolon, please go to prolonfmd.com. For the company behind all this amazing research, the mission of adding life to life by helping people to live longer and healthier, please go to L-Nutra, that's Nutra.com, L-Nutra.com.
Okay. Now, Dr. Xu, I have my final and signature question on the Health Detective podcast that we'll wrap up with. And I'm laughing because normally people throw me off with how they answer this one. I can't normally tell. I would imagine, and rightfully so, that I might be able to guess the answer to this one, but I will ask nonetheless. The question is, if I could give you a magic wand and you could get every single person in this world to do one thing for their health, whether that's literally do one thing or stop doing one thing, what is the one thing you'd get them to do?
It's easy for me. I think the science has shown over and over again. 5 days of prolonged fast, 3 times a year, it will do wonder to your health. 15 days of effort in 365 days in a year. Think about that. 3 5-day cycles of prolonged. You will be amazed what it can do for you. A little bit of break, a little bit of a fast can do wonder for your health.